Welcome everyone. Well, this week our Torah portion is Vayeshev, or he settled, and we will travel on from Yisrael's story to the story of his ben Yosef. Now, as we open, we start with Yaakov, or Yisrael, living in the land of his fathers' sojournings, which was in the land of Canaan. Now, as for Yosef, well, he is Yisrael's second to last son of Rachel, his beloved. He at this time was truly Yosef's most favored son. Now why? Simply because he was one of only two sons that will be born of his favorite wife, Rachel, the one in whom he first seek to marry. Now, with that being the case, well, understand this, that his father presented his ben of favor with a robe of many colors to wear. But now, when someone receives all of the attention of a person, well, that eventually leads to the others who are looked past to become jealous and envious. And it then led to Joseph's brethren hating him. Now get this, as some will see, it is adding fuel to the fire. Well, one day, Yosef had a vision or else a dream, and he would then present it to his father and his brothers. Well, they, in fact, would not like what they had heard. Now, what they heard was that him and his brothers were binding sheaves in the field, but unlike his brother's sheaves, well, his sheaf rose above theirs and stood upright. Why? Because he would later in life prove himself loyal and righteous to Yahweh. But now, as for his brother's sheaves, well, they bowed down to Yosef's. Now, as his brethren may have had an early prophetic gift, or Yahweh-given spiritual gift of discernment, they understood it to mean that Yosef would rule over them. But you see, they could not take it, and jealousy and greed and self-pride would take over, and they denied their spiritual prowess and hated him even more than times before with their Yetzer Hara, evil inclination. Now Yosef was also given another vision where there was a sun and a moon and 11 stars who bowed down to him. But now after his father Yisrael heard of it, he rebuked his ben and said, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Or are you indeed to rule over us?" Which made his brothers hate him even more. So we see that Yisrael also had the spirit of discernment. Now, why was it that Yisrael rebuked his son Yosef? You see, I tend to think that it is because Yisrael did not get wind of the plan that Yahweh had stored and set for Yosef. But remember that it also states that Yisrael, his father, kept that saying in mind. So next, as Yisrael asked his ben Yosef where his brothers were, and found out that they were pasturing the sheep in Shechem, well, next he called for Yosef, and what did Yosef say next? Exactly, Hanini, or here I am. And where have we heard this before? In Bereshit, or Genesis, chapter 22, verse 11, right when Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay Yitzhak, but the angel of Adonai called to him and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, what? Exactly, Hanini, here I am. So, do you see that when there is something or a big part of Yahweh's master plan, it starts with Hanini, here I am, as we answer Yahweh. So next, Yisrael tells Yosef to go see if all is well with his brothers and the sheep, and to bring word back to him, or Yahweh's true gospel, which would be the saving and dedication and obedience to Yahweh that Yosef would soon have. So next, after a roadblock and some time, Yosef finds them in Dothan. But just as the evil inclination, Yetzer Hara, is there, so is Yahweh and Yeshua, salvation. And before he approaches his brothers, they had concocted a plan to kill Yosef and lie to their father Yisrael and to tell him that Yosef was killed by a wild beast and throwing him into a cistern. But just as that was the evil inclination, Yetzer Hara, so too is salvation, as with Yeshua and Yahweh. And his brother Reuben said, we shouldn't take his life. Don't shed blood, but instead throw him into the cistern. And he intended to rescue him later and restore him to his father Yisrael. So they did just that. And after that, they sat to eat and saw, no other than Ishmaelites with many eye-pleasing items upon their caravan. And they decided to, upon Yehuda's words, to sell Yosef to them. So they did. And soon Midianites, traders, passed by, and they retrieved Yosef from the cistern and sold their brethren Yosef to them for 20 shekels, whom in return took Yosef to Mitzrayim. But now, soon after Reuben returned to retrieve his loving brother Yosef, but to no prevail, as he was sold already, and he was in much pain and agony at this point because of it. Which next they all sent the robe in which Yisrael gave to Yosef with goat-dipped blood all on it to Yisrael to confirm that it belonged to Yosef with deception. That sometime later would be returned to them, as Yosef would not at first tell his brethren who he truly was. Now get this. Yisrael deceived Yitzhak with the fur of a goat that he placed on his arms, or had placed on his arms. And Yisrael later got deceived by his children with the what? Blood of a goat. So at this point now, Yisrael mourns his son Yosef for many days, and none of his sons or daughters could comfort him at this point. Now, at about that time, the Midianites had sold Yosef in Mitzrayim, or Egypt, to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, a captain of the guard. So at about this time, it was time that Yehuda left his brothers and turned to Hera. And he took and laid with a daughter of a Canaanite, whose name was Shua. And she bore him 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. Now, it's been said that actually this stuff had already happened before the situation with Yosef and his brethren when they sold him. But it was said that because of this, at this point later on, Reuben, when he lost his wife, he was so much in pain and distress because of it that he sought solace with his brethren. And this was about the time that he came back, and he was with them when they were about to sell Yosef into slavery, basically. But continuing on. So eventually, Yehuda took a wife for the firstborn. And her name was Tamar. But was very evil in Yahweh's perspective. So he killed So Yehuda told his next son to, as in that time, to perform the duties of a husband's brother, are to go into Tamar and to preserve his brother's identity. But he did not fully fulfill the duty. And instead of giving descendants, he dropped his seed on the ground, which was evil in Yahweh's eyes. So he was killed by Yahweh too. So next, Yehuda tells Tamar to go back to her father's house and wait till his last son is of age, and she will be his wife. But as time went on and Yehuda's wife died, Tamar got word of where he was going to be. So she took her widow's clothes and completely covered her face with her veil. For she saw that Yehuda had not given Shelah, who was now growing, to her, as they were to be one. So then when Yehuda saw her, Tamar, he thought she was a prostitute, and not realizing that she was his daughter-in-law, he said, "Come, let me sleep with you." But eventually, for her price, she in fact got from him his seal and its cord and his staff. So she laid with him and conceived by him. Now, later on, about 3 months later, exactly, if I'm not mistaken, Yehuda was told Tamar, his daughter-in-law, was acting unholy, and that she was in fact pregnant as a result of her unholy acts. So Yehuda said, "Bring her out and let her be burned alive." But wait, didn't he just 3 months prior do the same thing by sleeping with a prostitute? Exactly. So he too was in the wrong, and he would find that out shortly, because when she was brought out, she told her father-in-law that she was pregnant by the man in which the items that she had gotten 3 months earlier from Yehuda belonged to. And he soon acknowledged it, that she was righteous and not putting him on blast, basically putting him out there, because she risked if he said those weren't mine. So he realized that she was more righteous than him at that point, and she accepted him. So she eventually gave birth to twins, and whose names were Peretz, breaking out, in Zerach, scarlet. Now, back to Yosef. Now, Adonai was with Yosef, and he became wealthy and blessed while in the household of his master, the Mitzrayim. Now, his master knew and saw it too, and eventually promoted Yosef to manager of his household. Now, as Yosef was built and handsome as it was, the master's wife took to him and told him to sleep with her. But he would refuse, as he knew that Yahweh prohibited it. But she would continually pester him to do so, but to no avail. But one day, as he was in the house doing work, and no one else was there, she grabbed him by the robe and said, "Sleep with me." But he listened to Yahweh and fled, leaving an evil situation along with his robe behind. But now with it, she called out to her man and lied and said that Yosef tried to lay with her. But upon her screaming, it was then that he fled, leaving his robe behind. Now when his master heard of all of this from his wife, he became furious and had Yosef put into prison, but the royal prison. Now, did you know that Yosef is actually the story of Yeshua? You see, understand this, that his own people sold Yeshua to the Pharisees with Judas for 20 shekels. And Yosef was sold by his brethren for 20 shekels. And also, Yosef suffered, and Yeshua suffered for us. And Yosef would restore and protect his people and brothers. And so too would Yeshua do the same for all of us. But now, back to Yosef. While he was in prison, Adonai was with him, and he was made supervisor over all of the prisoners. Now soon the Egyptian king's cupbearer and baker gave offense to the king of Egypt. And, they were placed in prison where Yosef was. But remember, he was overseer of them. Now one day, upon hearing that the two of them had a dream and could not interpret it, So Yosef said, don't interpretations belong to Yahweh? So I guess we can easily say that Yosef had the gift of Chachma, wisdom. And as he heard the cupbearer's dream, well, he interpreted it in Yahweh's favor. As Yosef, with blessing gifts of discernment and interpretation that were given to him, is what he used for these spiritual gifts. So next, the chief baker revealed his dream, and Yosef interpreted it, not being in his favor. But Yosef told the cupbearer to remember him when it goes well with him, and to maintain and remember to approach Pharaoh with what he did for him. And just as Yosef said, with the help of Yahweh, well, it all happened word for word to them on the third day. But the chief cupbearer didn't remember Yosef. But remember that Yahweh never forgets us. Note this, that Yosef never directly seen Yahweh or his messengers, as his forefathers had with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yisrael. And also note that it was his robe that his brothers used to deceive Yisrael with. And it was his garment that Potiphar's wife used to deceive her husband with. And he was placed in two pits total. One because of his brethren, and the other because of Potiphar's wife. Now get this. Yosef proved himself to be righteous and loyal and obedient to Yahweh, and that he would not take in the ways of sleeping with Potiphar's wife, and taking in the ways of the evil ways of the land that he was in. He stayed loyal and kept the laws and love of Yahweh. And this proved that since he can do this, he was worthy to stand over the people of Egypt and to be righteous and fair and just in all his ways, and not give in to deception or any of those things that he learned along the way. And that is why he was given, another reason, the power that he was. But now, as in our half-Torah portion, well, there is a judgment on Yisrael as they sell their souls, their neshama, for the things of the world, such as silver and idols, and Yosef as well for 20 shekels. Now they turn away from those suffering and instead sell them for what they want, because Yahweh supplies us with what we need. Now they go against Yahweh's ways. And man and son lay with the same woman, such as Yehudah with Tamar. But you shall not forget that it is Yahweh who is the one to destroy evil in all of its ways. The one whose height is like the height of the cedars. The one who brought Yisrael out of Egypt and led them 40 years in the wilderness, where they were taken care of all the way through and supplied for. Now the one who raised up prophets and Nazarites. But you, Yisrael, made the Nazarites drink wine, such as Samson, and told the prophets to stop prophesying, such as Jeremiah. But he who does this and is evil, all will be taken away from you, as Yahweh will press you down in your place, as a cart full of sheaves presses down with its weight. As Yahweh will punish you for all of your iniquities. For Adonai, Yahweh, does nothing without his secret being revealed to his servants, the prophets, as in the Torah in the Brit Kadash. So when you turn away from these prophets and don't listen to what they say are his true Torah and gospel, then you won't be revealed to these things. And if these things come upon you, you'll be caught off guard and unaware. Now, as in our Torah portion, well, as Yeshua went up to Jerusalem, or Aliyah Jerusalem, now in the temple, what did he find? Yes, money-hungry, selfish people. Now, Yeshua is telling us that we should not have money on our minds or in our hearts or any idols, or else these things as idols, as Yeshua tells us that our bodies are the temples. You see, the church is not a big church building. It is truly found inside of us. So we must clear out the evil from within our nefesh body and our neshama souls. Our temples are for worship to Yahweh and Yeshua only. See, people think that it's these churches and buildings they go to, but it's not that. That's why they get led by these false prophets and false words and these deceptions that they lead us with. And you have to understand this, that these buildings may look immaculate on the outside, big, beautiful, but on the inside they're filled with nothingness, dirt and dry bones, evil, and the dirty ways of the world. You see, we must find a true personal love and devotion with Yahweh and to Him. You see, we must live in faith and not in sight. Just as Moshe lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so as they looked upon it with faith for Yahweh to heal them, so too must we look up at Yeshua on the stake and have faith in Him to save us. We must seek the living waters from Yeshua so that we will never thirst again, as we worship Him in truth and neshama spirit. And now we will have the Aaronic blessing. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai cause His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Adonai lift up His countenance upon you and give you shalom. This has been a weekly Messianic Torah portion from Following Yeshua Ministries. For more information or for help, please visit www.followyeshuanow.com.